Welcome to the Disrupted Podcast. I'm your host, the Dr. Mateo Franco. I always say we're one disruption, one interaction away from a whole different experience of this thing called life, whether we're stuck, whether we're happy with where we're at and just looking for more. We're always just one interaction, one disruption, one choice away from a whole different experience of this thing called life. If you guys are listening to this, make sure you go to the Mateo Franco DC on YouTube and like and subscribe. Let's get to it. All right. Welcome everyone for another one here on the Mateo Franco DC channel, or the Disrupted Podcast if you're listening to the auditory experience. I have a first-time guest, Dr. John Morelli. I'm super excited to have him on. He's become a very, very good friend. I love listening to him. I learned so much from him as well, and I am very excited to share him with y'all. So without further ado, Dr. John, I'll let you give them a little background of who you are, what you're about, and we'll roll from there.
Thank you, Dr. Mateo. Glad to be here, man. I am a chiropractor mostly. I live in Las Vegas. I'm from Michigan originally. Live here with my wife, Dr. Ali Morelli, who is fantastic, and our son Leo, who's about to be 5. Fun little kid, full of energy. We love working with people on their health. At the end of the day, that's the big part of what drives us forward, is how we can help other people and let them get the goals that they need to. Personally, when I'm not in the office, I love CrossFit. I'm super active. I just ran a Spartan Ultra last year, so love pushing my body's to limits and seeing what's going on there. And then if I'm not thinking about health in some form or fashion or the other, then it's how to prepare our family for the future. We do a lot of investing in real estate, and just always somewhere in my mind is how can we help better assess or better help the family, better help the world, and keep everybody going.
That's awesome, man. That's one of the things I appreciate about you. I want to dive into health and some of the fitness stuff, but one of the things that comes to mind just hearing you speak and that I appreciate about you, I heard this quote the other day. It said, listening is emotional intelligence applied. And you were like one of the first people I thought of, like you and Ronnie are top of that list for me.
Thank you.
People that listen really well. And a lot of people that I've seen come around you will talk a lot, self included. But it's like when John opens his mouth, like you can understand the wealth of knowledge, experience that he has. And the other thing is you continue to grow. It's apparent because of what you produce and just who you are, the relationships that you have. So that's something that resonated with me.
Yeah, that's always been kind of like one of my codes is if you're going to talk, then say something worth listening to.
Right.
At the end of the day, I think we live in a world where people just want to fill the place with noise and hear themselves speak a whole lot. You're not going to learn a whole lot just hearing yourself speak. You're going to learn a lot more by what you can take in from everything else. And then when you're going to give back, you should give back. You should help the community. You should give back to other people. That's when you give your knowledge. But don't just fill it just because you have to or feel like you have to.
I love that. It is true. The world's a noisy place. So we just had... which you know Greg via.
Oh yeah, great guy.
Through Tribe. And so one of the things that he said this morning was that we've heard it before, but there's different levels of consciousness and awareness to it, is coming back to the questions that you ask. Quality of life is equivalent to the questions that you ask. And I would add, in addition to that, is knowing where to ask them, which in part is from asking more questions. But I do think it's very interesting is we all, and I shared this with it. This is a whole different philosophical thing. And one of my favorite things that was super fascinating to me, and one of the things that's helped me a ton, is that it's a game of attention. If you have kids are very good at that. It's a game of attention, but we all, to an extent, we all have different levels of how willing we are to pull people into our experience. But in the essence, we want people to experience the way that we do, right? And so because we have to be crazy, right? If we didn't think that the way that we're experiencing is the best, right? There's a strive for more, but we'd have to be crazy to continue to choose that in a sense. And I know that there's different avenues you can take that. But one of the things that you see on like social media, if you see like I follow sports and stuff like that, you'll see them post contradicting things. It has like it's like some of the stuff is just so far out there, and you can see the aim of it is just to create discussion below there.
Yep.
And people just want to pull people into how they experience when they want them to see the world the way that they see the world, and it's just very fascinating.
Exactly. I think the first time that became very obvious to me was a couple years ago. ESPN, they talk about everything, right? I mean, they talk about everything related to sport, but they will literally argue both sides of it on the same site on the same page. It was back-to-back pictures of Kevin Durant, and they were talking about how his numbers were better than Jordan's, and they had a picture of him with his arm looking ripped and huge and jacked and talking about how great he is. And then the very next article was how KD could be replaced by, and they listed some of these other people. And the picture that they used of him was something where, I mean, he can be a skinnier guy. Like, it was very much showing how skinny his arms are, and they put him next to some of these other people. And KD's also not short, and they made him look significantly smaller than everyone else in the picture. And I was like, you just wrote two completely contradicting articles on the exact same player, put them right next to each other, and you're seeing what's gonna get more attention, what's gonna get more clicks, talks, comments, and then it's gonna push you forward. But that's what happens when you're a huge conglomerate like ESPN.
Yeah, that's great. A little A/B split test there, huh?
Yes. Unfortunately for them, I think it popped up back to back for me, and I was like, this is a little too much. It's a little kind of obvious right now.
Yeah. Come on, try to hide it a little better. No, that's a great example. So tell me, give me a little bit of the backstory of a two-part question is how you got into being passionate to help others in health. And then kind of the second question off that would be the fitness part of it is like, have you always been super motivated to fit? Is it sports, athletics, or is it just something that came as a part of you helping other people be healthy?
Great question. Yeah, man, great question. When I was in high school, I was a big runner. I was a big swimmer. It was a big passion for me. And I went to go see a chiropractor because that's what people did who were in that type of realm. A lot of kids on the teams that I were on talked about how they felt taller or they recovered quicker. They felt that they could give more. Their reaction times were better. So I went because it's just what other people did. And that's kind of how I always thought chiropractic was a way to just do what the healthy people do. And then when I was in college, I was training for a triathlon, total freak accident. I ride my bike up to meet some friends because we're going to go for a run. Front tire falls off my bike, front forks planted on the ground. I go over the handlebars, land on my face. I still have a scar beneath my eye and on my jaw from when that happened. Had a concussion, blacked out. When I finally come to, I'm in the car headed to the hospital where I'm told that I'm going to need to have a rod put in my spine. They're going to fuse some segments together and just expect that I'll never have full mobility ever again. Well, you tell a 19-year-old athlete to expect to never have full mobility again, and that didn't go over very well. So I ended up asking for a second opinion, and I went back to go see that chiropractor. He took x-rays, he put together a plan for me. I saw him multiple times a day for a couple days, and then it slowly kind of went down from there. But within 3 months, I not only was moving better than I had been since the collision or since the accident, but I had been moving better than I was even before the accident ever happened. And after that, it was this real light bulb moment of, I didn't need to get a surgery and have my whole life trajectory change. If someone could do this for me, why don't I do this for other people? So finished my undergrad and went around life trying to get some real world experience so I could better understand what people were going through, better understand how I could help people. And then everything after that's been history. It's been great working with people on their health and, really seeing how we can change it and have people be more knowledgeable to make choices of what can you do ahead of time before doing something that can never be taken back or reversed. And that's been great.
I love that. That's a cool story too. I know that's my first time hearing it. One of the things, I know we practice certain ways similarly, but one of the things, and I saw this post, and speaking of contrasting sides, like I'm not responding to this, I'm just moving on. But someone's like, yeah, you don't need x-rays to get adjusted. And so I want to come into the value of x-rays. And I'll add my 2 cents on that statement. I think there's some context that should be created around that. But I obviously am a strong believer in x-rays, and there's 2 different levels of interpretations between what the medical community will look at. We'll see the same things, but our interpretation is going to be very, very different of the way to correct it. Do you kind of want to dive in the importance and the value of those x-rays, especially that you get to see your story where you could have had rods or you could have the healthy spine that you have today?
So ultimately, when you see, if you can't see, you're guessing or you're making an assumption. at best case scenario. To not have a clear view of what you are doing, you're making a lot of guesses. X-rays are great. There's other technology to help get a better idea of what's going on with someone's body to help better make an assessment. A lot of other science-backed technologies that we can use. And I think that they're all important and they all have their time and their place to better understand what's going on with a person. I mean, to say that someone doesn't need it to be adjusted, for some people, yeah, I mean, I guess that's true, but we're guessing. Like, we are making a lot of assumptions if we can't see exactly what we're looking at to make the best change for the individual person. And then that's the chiropractic part of it. There's angles that we draw, there's measurements, there's degrees where, if someone's curve is going in one way, you want to adjust in a certain way. If their curve goes in a different way, you're going to adjust from a different angle. Logistically, there's a lot of benefits to doing it. But along that line, even just looking at the angles of the bones and the angles of what we're going to come in for the adjustment to improve that person's posture, positioning, quality of life, there are other parts of that too where we might just not know. There's been times where I've taken x-rays with someone and they've had a fracture and no one ever told them or they never knew. Someone just the other day had a CT done post her pregnancy and she brought in the results and she said, or an MRI, that she had a bilateral pars fracture of her L5. Now, had we not known that and we adjusted from posterior to anterior, we could have pushed that bone further forward. She could eventually have loss of feeling in her legs, loss of control of her legs. She could lose control of her bladder and her bowels. So had you not known that, you could have really hurt the person. And then there are other issues too. Someone came in just the other day, and when taking a look at their x-rays, we could see that in their lungs, they had a pleural effusion. They had liquid building up in their lungs, potentially an infection. And this is the type of thing where that left completely unaddressed. A pleural effusion is one of the most common causes of mortality for lung-related conditions for people. Had images not been taken, this person literally could have lost their life. And yes, it didn't relate to chiropractic and the effect of I didn't take the film because I was looking for a pleural effusion. I was looking for other things going on with his thoracic spine and ribs, and it just happened to be there that we saw it. But because we saw it, we potentially saved his life and changed the direction of where he's going to go from there. So, I mean, like, you could adjust someone without taking x-rays, but it's like, why would you if you have things to better assess what's going on with the person?
Right. I love that answer. And I love the examples and stories too. I was thinking about like a metaphor for an analogy. I was like, yeah, it's just like your surgeon. He could go do heart surgery on you without any sort of imaging, any sort of diagnostics. Like, he totally could. Would it be effective? That's a whole different question, right? And the other example I use is, it's like, and if that's what you want, like, you can do what you want. That's part of being a human. I was like, if you take your car to the mechanic and they just start banging around on things, like, yeah, they can do that. They can hit the things that stick out. Like, you totally can do that. The question is it going to be effective? Is it the best route or best option? And like you said, not seeing is guessing. And that's why for us too, it's also the other thing in addition to, which I know that the same reason that we utilize it too, is being able to see all that stuff, looking at where the body's at, if it's degenerating faster than it's regenerating. But with those curves, with those measurements, there's a lot of misaligned bones typically in the spines that come in to everyone's office if they're not consistently getting adjusted, exercising, doing things that keep that spine in its correct position. And so then at that point, then it comes down to knowing exactly which ones of the misalignments are actually causing compensations and other things in there, which helps people heal more efficiently.
Right.
But I love hearing that from y'all. And I know your clinical, you've been in practice how long now? I love hearing your clinical.
9 years.
9 years.
So time flies. But yeah, it's like you said, I think part of it can come down to a philosophy. Like, what is your worldview on this? In that same regard, we have a family that we've seen for a while now in the office. We saw mom and dad, and their daughter had been at school and was going through the typical spinal screening that will happen. And they were told, hey, your daughter potentially has a scoliosis. So they took her to the MD. MD took x-rays. They looked at things, and MD said, yeah, there are some things developing, but our plan for now is we're just going to wait. In a year, we're going to take a look at her x-rays again. We'll see what's going on, and we'll decide what to do from there. And the mom just went, yeah, we're not doing that, because waiting a year and then hoping that it gets better, she didn't feel was a really great route. She's like, we're going to wait a year, we'll hope it gets better, and if it doesn't get better, now she's gone through an entire year of her life with the body not in a good position, with it potentially getting worse, with muscles learning how to hold onto bones that are in improper positions. She went, no, that's not going to work for me. So she took the child to see us. We looked at the x-rays, we looked at the positions. We got her adjusted. We've been working with her for 3 months now. We just updated her x-rays. No scoliotic curves whatsoever. Everything is stacked up the way it's supposed to be from an anterior to posterior view. Her spine looks great. Like, to me, that is my worldview as well. And I think if you know that there is a problem developing, yes, you have the right and the option to wait and to just see what happens and decide what you're going to do in a year's time. Or if you know something's wrong, you can start working on it now. So a year from now, you're in a better position, and then you can continue to live your life and you continue to improve from there instead of just waiting for problems to get worse.
Right. And the key phrase that I hear out of that is responsibility in health. And I know that's a high value for not only the people that we work with, but the people that we accept as clients too. Is you've got to have responsibility. If you're not showing up to your appointments, you're not going to do your part at home. That's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
The other thing that I like to, I'm getting ready to do a video on this, is I'm working on changing things into more analogies that just resonate and continue to just rep those analogies so people really, really understand it. And the other thing, and I think we talked about it with x-rays, where we're seeing things that people didn't feel, right? Things like degeneration, talking about the pleural effusion, the fractures, like those things. And so we have a handout at the top that says approximately 15, and it's common in the chiropractic. Approximately 15% of the nerves are based off what we feel. The other 85% is based off of function.
Yeah.
And so the thing that I'm encouraging our patients with, our wellness patients, reminding them, but even people that are looking to pursue care in our practice or have just started care, is that waiting until there's a pain or a symptom there to make smart health choices is the equivalent of waiting to make smart financial choices when your balance is negative.
Yeah.
And the second part of that, which I know that you're going to resonate with this, is what we would call wellness in our practice. The second part is then once you get to a good spot, you have another choice. Do you want to continue to be in a good spot, or do you want to default programming or patterns to go back where you started? And it starts. It's a mind thing. You have to understand that like it just doesn't, like it's just like exercising. It's just like good relationships, right? It doesn't. You don't get to a good spot of relationship and stop doing what got you there. And
what gets you there won't always get you past there, right?
Right.
Or what got you to that point is what got you to that point, and you have to understand that too, for both the positive or the negative connotation of that same similar concept.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. Tell me a little bit more. Let's transition a little bit. It's been super awesome so far. That's why I love podcasting. I know we got a couple minutes, but tell me a little bit more, and maybe we'll dive into this next one too. But give me a little bit of the fitness part. So I know you do CrossFit, and then I know a little bit before the call where I talked about also, which I think is important to add in here, is the importance of rest as well as knowing when to push yourself and mentally drive in these directions, whether it's business, whether it's fitness, and also knowing when to switch gears and give the body or the mind rest.
Oh yeah, man. That's like I said, last year I ran the Spartan Ultra as a 31-mile race. We go over all these obstacles during the course of it. Training for it was 4 months of a lot of running to get myself to that point. And that resting intentionally was one of the biggest takeaways I had from that entire process. Because during that 4 months of running, it's not that every single training week I ran further than I did the week before to better prepare myself for things. I would push myself further, and then I would have weeks where I would take a step back and kind of rest a little bit. Week where I'd push myself forward, step to rest, push myself forward, step to rest. When we get in these seasons where we feel like we constantly need to grind and grow and grow and grow and grow, then it can really wear and tear on us. I mean, part of that was like learning the lesson in the training program. And then because I had gone through weeks and months of multiple days running multiple hours during these training sessions, when the training sessions were over after I did the race, like 2 days later, I felt like I had all this energy because I hadn't run for 2 days, which was great. So I decided I want to get in the gym and lift weights and continue to stress my nervous system and stress my body. And as I did that, I totally crushed myself. My HRV the next day was so low. My heart rate was so high. Respiratory rate was gone. I was completely shot. I was exhausted, couldn't do much. And then had to go through a couple weeks where I wasn't training fully. And then I got into a season, since I didn't properly learn that lesson and properly take away that I needed to rest intentionally not long ago, I was in a season where I went about 2 months straight, overarching, overachieving, over pushing myself 5 days a week. And then my body just absolutely shut down. So I spent about the last 3 to 4 weeks really overcoming something going on with my body where my nervous system was so shot. I needed 10 hours of sleep most nights, was just continually going through this same loop over and over again where I wasn't fully back to who I could be and who I could live. It's because I didn't give myself that time to appropriately rest and understand the big purpose. So like you talked about health, like health is super important to me. Fitness is super important to me. But I think it's also understanding that we have different goals at different stages and periods of our life. Like when I was 19 and I was training for this race, maybe I'm in a season then where I should be pushing myself a lot, going all these extra distances, going these points. I mean, now I'm in my mid to upper 30s. And during this time period, like I've accepted the fact that I am not going to be on a podium competing for different levels. And that's okay, because the purpose for my health now is to make sure that I have a very long life for not only quantity, but also a quality of life. I want to be able to keep up with my son for many years. I want to be able to continue to practice for many years. I want to be around here for a long time and not have to worry about simple things like, am I strong enough to be able to stand up off of a toilet? And when you get to that point, now my training is very much changed where it's like, I don't necessarily need to go for max repetitions of handstand push-ups, and I don't need to try to jerk as much weight over my head as I possibly can, because the risk reward for me isn't there anymore. Like now I just need to know I need to be here. I need to be strong enough to do these things, but I don't need to be at that point where I'm doing improper risks for the return. I don't know if that was like too much, but you know what I mean?
No, that was really good. And it'll be a good segue into the next one, because a lot of it is what I'm hearing is the emotional intelligence part is there's a saying, knowing when to push or pivot, right? And so it's something that we'll probably dive into. And it's okay. What I'm hearing you say too is the other thing that I think is a great lesson, if people are listening to this, is that it's okay to feel a certain way. When your body and you're taking out the comparison, it's like, this is just what John wants. Like, it's not like this is what the top CrossFitter in the world is doing.
Right.
And maybe that makes sense for them.
Right.
But maybe it doesn't make sense, but you're going to do what's best for John, which is sometimes it is resting. Right. And sometimes it is pushing. But you have very high emotional intelligence, and we're all growing and developing that too. But that's one of the things that I hope people heard in that is the emotional intelligence. It's okay to feel the way that you are. The question is, do you want to continue to feel that way, or what's your long-term goal? And considering all of those things when you make those choices.
Yeah, to piggyback off what you just said, it's understanding there's also going to be days where you feel different ways. Like you can be happy one day, you can be sad the next day, you can be energetic one day, you can feel like you don't have it all the next day. And both of those things can be okay. Like it's the label that we put on it that decides all these other things with our life. Just because you have a sad day doesn't mean that you're not a happy person. It just means that maybe you had a bad day, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. Like it's part of the whole process.
It's so good. I love that. I think this is a good spot to finish at. We'll definitely have you back on here too. If you guys haven't already, hit the like and subscribe button. But I know John's got to get going here. But we'll have John on again. If you guys have questions, leave it in the comment section. If you guys want to connect with John, leave it in the comment section. We'll make sure you're able to do that. But we're definitely going to have John back on as a guest. Thank you so much, John.
Thanks, Mateo. Good to see you, man.
Awesome. If you're listening to this, that means you completed this episode. If you have a friend or someone that you're thinking of currently, please go ahead and just share this episode with them or connect them to our channel so they know where we're at, whether it's on podcast or the video format. Connect them with our channel. This may be the disruption they need to disrupt them out of an undesigned life into a well-designed life filled with meaning, purpose, and passion. I will see you all in the next episode.